I'm already forgetting that you're not real. Like this really, so
Well, I
it's
am real.
novel.
This is just an avatar
That's
version of me.
that's a
But
deep
here,
philosophical question. Yes.
but I mean, but here's some of the. So I put this on this morning, and I was like, all right, like it's like, okay, so this my hair is a little shorter in this than my physical hair is right now. I
Yeah,
probably need to go get a haircut.
sure.
And like, and I did happen to shave this morning, but if I hadn't, I could still have this photorealistic avatar that is more cleanly shaven, right? Even if I'm a few days in, um, physically. So I do think that there are going to start to be these subtle questions that seep in where the avatar is realistic in the sense of this is kind of what you looked like at the time of capture, but it's not necessarily temporally accurate to
Mhm.
exactly what you look like in this moment. And I think that there are going to end up being um, a bunch of questions that come from that over time that I think are going to be fascinating too.
You mean just like the nature of identity of who we are? Are we the
Yeah.
people? You know how people do like summer beach body? Will people be for the scan? They'll try to lose some weight and look their best and sexiest with the nice hair and everything like that. I mean, um, it does raise the question of if a lot of people interacting with the digital version of ourselves, who are we really? Are we the entity driving the avatar, or are we the avatar?
Well, I mean, I think our physical bodies also fluctuate and change over time too. So I think that there's a similar question of like, which version of that are we? Right? There's like the,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
and it's interesting identity question because, all right, it's like I don't know, it's like weight fluctuates or things like that. It's like I think most people don't tend to think of themselves as the well, I don't know. It's an interesting psychological question. Some people, maybe a lot of people do think about themselves as the kind of worst version, but but I think a lot of people
Yeah,
probably think about themselves as the best version, and
yeah.
and then it's like what you are on a day to day basis doesn't necessarily map to um to either of those. So I think that's yeah. There will definitely be a bunch of social scientists and folks will have to and psychologists are really there's going to be a lot to understand about how our perception of ourselves and others is shifted from this.
Well, this might be a bit of a complicated and a dark question, but one of the first feelings I had experiencing this is I would love to talk to loved ones. And the next question I have is I would love to talk to people who are no longer here that are loved ones. So, like, if you look into the future, is that something you think about? Who people who pass away, but they can still exist in the metaverse? You can still have, talk to your father, talk to your grandfather and grandmother and mother once they pass away. The power of that experience is one of the first things my mind jumped to because it's like, this is so real.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of norms and things that people have to figure out around that. There's probably some balance where if someone has lost a loved one and is grieving, there may be ways in which being able to interact or relive certain memories could be helpful, but then there's also probably an extent to which it could become unhealthy. And I mean, I'm not an expert in that, so I think we'd have to study that and understand it in more detail. We have a fair amount of experience with how to handle death and identity and people's digital content through social media already, unfortunately, right? Where there's unfortunately, people who use our services die every day, and their families, often want to have access to their profiles, and we have whole protocols that we go through where there are certain parts of it that we try to memorialize, so that way the family can get access to it, so that way the account doesn't just go away immediately. But then there are other things that are important kind of private things that person has, like we're not going to give the family access to someone's messages, for example. So so yeah, I think that there's some best practices, I think, from the current digital world that will carry over, but yeah, I think that this will enable some different things. Another version of this is how this intersects with AIs, right? Because and one of the things that we're really focused on is we want the world to evolve in a way where there isn't like a single AI super intelligence, but where a lot of people are empowered by having AI tools to do their jobs and make their lives better. And if you're a creator, right, and if you run a podcast like you do, then you have a big community of people who are super interested to talk to you. I know you'd love to cultivate that community, and you interact with them online outside of the podcast as well. But I mean, there's way more demand both to interact with you, and I'm sure you'd love to interact with the community more, but you just are limited by the number of hours in the day. So, at some point, I think making it so that you could build an AI version of yourself that could interact with people, not after you die, but while you're here to help, help people kind of fulfill this desire to interact with you and your desire to build a community. And there's a lot of interesting questions around that. And that's obviously, it's not just in the metaverse. I think we'd want to make that work across all the messaging platforms, WhatsApp and Messenger and Instagram Direct. But there's certainly a version of that where if you could have an avatar version of yourself in the metaverse that people can interact with, and you could define that sort of an AI version where people know that they're interacting with an AI, that it's not the kind of physical version of you, but maybe that AI, even if they know it's an AI, is the next best thing because they're probably not going to necessarily all get to interact with you directly. I think that could be a really compelling experience. There's a lot of things that we need to get right about it. That we're not ready to release the version that a creator can kind of build a version of themselves yet, but we're starting to experiment with it in terms of releasing a number of AIs that people can interact with in different ways. And I think that is also just going to be a very powerful set of capabilities that people will have over time.
So you've made major strides in developing these early AI personalities, with the idea where you can talk to them across the Meta apps and have like interesting, unique kind of conversations. What can you describe your vision there in these early strides, and what are some technical challenges there?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of the vision comes from this idea that, I don't think we necessarily want there to be like one big super intelligence. We want to empower everyone to both have more fun, accomplish their business goals, it's just everything that they're trying to do. And we don't tend to have one person that we work with on everything. And I don't think in the future we're going to have one AI that we work with. I think you're going to want a variety of these. So there are a bunch of different uses. Some will be kind of more assistant oriented. There's a sort of the kind of plain and simple one that we're building is called just Meta AI. It's simple. You can chat with it in any of your threads. It doesn't have a face, right? It's just kind of more vanilla and neutral and kind of factual, but it can help you with a bunch of stuff. Then there are a bunch of cases that are more kind of business oriented. So let's say you want to contact a small business. Similarly, that business probably doesn't want to have to staff someone to man the phones, and you probably don't want to wait on the phone to talk to someone. But having someone who you can just like talk to in a natural way, who can help you if you're having an issue with a product, or if you want to make a reservation, or if you want to buy something online, having the ability to do that and have a natural conversation rather than navigate some website or have to call someone and wait on hold, I think it's going to be really good both for the businesses and for normal people who want to interact with businesses. So I think stuff like that makes sense. Then there are going to be a bunch of use cases that I think are just fun, right? So I think I think that there will be AIs that like can tell jokes. So you can put them into chat thread with friends. I mean, I think a lot of this, because we're like a social company, right? I mean, we're fundamentally around helping people connect in different ways. And part of what I'm excited about is how do you enable these kind of AIs to facilitate connection between two people or more, put them in a group chat, make the group chat more interesting, around whatever your interests are: sports, fashion, trivia,
Video games. I love the idea of playing. I think you mentioned Baldur's Gate, an incredible game. Just having an AI that you play together with, that seems like a small thing, but it could deeply enrich the like gaming experience.
I do think that AIs will make the NPCs a lot better in games too. So that's a separate thing that I'm pretty excited
Yes.
about. But yeah, I mean, one of the AIs that we've built that just in our internal testing people have loved the most is like a adventure text based um, get like a dungeon master,
Yeah.
um,
Nice.
and I think part of what has been fun. I mean, we talked about this a bit, but we've gotten some like real kind of cultural figures to play a bunch of these folks and be the embodiment and the avatar of them. So Snoop Dogg is the dungeon master, which I think is just
Yes.
hilarious.
In terms of the next steps of, if you mentioned Snoop, to create a Snoop AI, so basically AI personality replica, a copy, or not a copy, maybe inspired by Snoop. What are the some of the technical challenges of that? What does that experience look like for Snoop to be able to
Yeah.
create
So
that AI
so
personality?
starting off, creating new personas is easier because it doesn't need to stick
Right.
exactly to what that physical person would want, how they'd want to be represented, right? It's like it's just a new character that we created. So even though so Snoop in that case is he's basically an actor, right? He's playing the dungeon master, but it's not Snoop Dogg, right? It's whoever the dungeon master is. um if you want to actually make it so that you have an AI embodying a real creator, there's a whole set of things that you need to do to make sure that that AI is not going to say things that the creator doesn't want, right? Um, and that the AI is going to know things and be able to represent things in the way that the creator would want, in the way that the creator would know. Um, so I think that it's less of a it's less of a question around like having the avatar express them. I mean that I think we're it's like we have our kind of V1 of that we'll release soon, is after Connect, but that'll get better over time. But a lot of this is really just about continuing to make the models for these AIs so that they're just more and more, I don't know, you could say like reliable or predictable in terms of what they'll communicate. So that way, when you want to create the Lex assistant AI that your community can talk to, you can, you don't program them like normal computers. You're training them. They're AI models, not kind of normal computer programs. But you want to get it to be predictable enough so that way you can set some parameters for it. And even if it isn't perfect all the time, you want it to generally be able to stay within those bounds. So that's a lot of what I think we need to nail for the creators, and that's why that one's actually a much harder problem, I think, than starting with new characters that you're creating from scratch. So that one I think will probably um, start releasing sometime next year, not this year, but experimenting with existing characters and the assistant and games and a bunch of different personalities and experimenting with some small businesses. I think that stuff we'll be ready to do this year, and we're rolling it out, basically right after Connect.
Yeah, I'm deeply entertained by the possibility of me sitting down with myself and saying, "Hey, man, like you need to stop the dad jokes," or
I think
whatever.
the
Like,
idea of a podcast between you and AI assistant Lex podcast.
I mean, there's just even the experience of a Kodak avatar being able to freeze yourself, like to basically first mimic yourself. So everything you do, you get to see yourself do it. That's a surreal experience. That feels like if I was like an ape looking in a mirror for the first time, realizing like, oh, that's you. But then freezing that and being able to look around like I'm looking at you. It's a I don't know how to put it into words, but it just feels like a fundamentally new experience. Like seeing maybe color for the first time. I'm experiencing a new way of seeing the world for the first time because it's physical reality, but it's digital. Like, and realizing that that's possible is just it's blowing my mind. It's just really exciting because I lived most of my life, before the internet and experiencing the internet, experiencing voice communication and video communication. You think like, well, there's a ceiling to this, but this is making me feel like, oh, there might not be. There might be that blend of physical reality and digital reality. That's actually what the future is.
Yeah, I think
It's a
so.
weird experience. It feels like the early days of like a totally new way of living. And like there's a lot of people that kind of complain, well, the internet is not that's not reality. You need to turn all that off and go, in nature. But this feels like this will make those people happy, I feel like, because it feels real. The flaws and everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, a big part of how we're trying to design these new computing products is that they should be physical. Right? I think that's a big part of the issue with computers and TVs and even phones is like, yeah, I mean, maybe you can interact with them in different places, but they're fundamentally like you're sitting, you're still. And I mean, people are just not meant to be that way. I mean, I think you and I have this shared passion for sports and martial arts and doing stuff like that. Where you're just moving around. It's like so much of what makes us people is like, you move around. We're not just like a brain in a tank, right? It's where the human experience is a physical one, and so it's not just about having the immersive expression of the digital world. It's about being able to really natively bring that together. And I do really think that the real world is this mix of the physical and the digital, right? The digital there's too much digital at this point for it to just be siloed to a small screen, but the physical is too important. So you don't want to just sit down all day long at a desk. So I think that this is, yeah, I do think that this is the future. This is, I think, the kind of philosophical way that I would want the world to work in the future is a much more coherently blended physical and digital world.
There might be some difficult philosophical and even ethical questions we have to figure out as a society. Maybe you can comment on this. So the metaverse seems to enable, sort of unlock a lot of experiences that we don't have in the physical world. And the question is like, what is and isn't allowed in the metaverse? In video games, we allow all kinds of crazy stuff. And in physical reality, a lot of that is illegal. So where's that line? Where's that gray area between video game and physical reality? Do you have a sense of that?
Well, I mean, there are content policies and things like that, right? In terms of what people are allowed to create. But I mean, a lot of the rules around physical, I think we try to have a society that is as free as possible, meaning that people can do as much of what they want, unless you're going to do damage to other people and infringe on their rights. And the idea of damage is somewhat different in a digital environment. I mean, when I get into some world with my friends, the first thing we start doing is shooting each other, which obviously we would not do in the physical world because you need to hurt each other. But in a game, that's like it's almost it's like just fun and even in like the lobby of a game, right? It's like it's not even bearing on the game. It's just kind of like a funny sort of humorous thing to do. So it's like, is that problematic? I don't think so, because it's fundamentally you're not causing harm in that world. So I think that the part of the question that I think we need to figure out is, what are the ways where things could have been harmful in the physical world that we will now be freed from that, and therefore there should be fewer restrictions in the digital world. And then there might be new ways in which there could be harm in the digital world that there weren't the case before. So there's more anonymity, right? It's when you show up to a restaurant or something, it's like all the norms where you pay the bill at the end. It's because you have one identity, and if you stiff them, then like life is a repeat game, and that's not going to work out well for you. But in a digital world where you can be anonymous and show up in different ways, I think the incentive to act like a good citizen can be a lot less, and that causes a lot of issues and toxic behavior. So I think that needs to get sorted out. So I think in terms of what is allowed, I think you want to just look at what are the damages. But then there's also other things that are not related to kind of harm, less about what should be allowed and more about what will be possible, that are more about the laws of physics, right? It's like, if you wanted to travel to see me in person, you'd have to get on a plane, and that would take a few hours to get here. Whereas, we could just jump in a conference room and put on these headsets, and we're basically teleported into a space where it feels like we're together. So that's a very novel experience that it breaks down some things that previously would have defied the laws of physics for what it would take to get together. And I think that that will create a lot of new opportunities, right? So, and one of the things that I'm curious about is, there are all these debates right now about remote work or people being together. And I think this gets us a lot closer to being able to work physically in different places, but actually have it feel like we're together. So, I think that the dream is that people will one day be able to just work wherever they want, but we'll have all the same opportunities because you'll be able to feel like you're physically together. I think we're not there today with just video conferencing and the basic technologies that we have, but I think part of the idea is that with something like this, over time you could get closer to that, and that would open up a lot of opportunities, right? Because then people could live physically where they want while still being able to get the benefits of being physically or kind of feeling like you're together with people at work, all the ways that helps to build more culture and build better relationships and build trust, which I think are real issues that if you're not seeing people, in person ever. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's very hard from first principles to think about all the implications of a technology like this, and all the good and the things that you need to mitigate. So you try to do your best to kind of envision what things are going to be like and accentuate the things that they're going to be awesome, and hopefully mitigate some of the downside things. But it's the reality is that we're going to be building this out 1 year at a time. It's going to take a while, so we're going to just get to see how it evolves and what developers and different folks do with it.
If you could comment, this might be a bit of a very specific technical question, but Llama 2 is incredible. You've released it recently. There's already been a lot of exciting developments around it. What's your sense about its release, and is there a Llama 3 in the future?
Yeah, I think on the last podcast that we did together, we were talking about the debate that we were having around open sourcing Llama 2. And I'm glad that we did. I think at this point, there's the value of open sourcing a foundation model like Llama 2 is significantly greater than the risks. And in my view, we spent a lot of time doing a very rigorous assessment of that and red teaming it. But I'm very glad that we released Llama 2. I think the reception has been it's just been really exciting to see how excited people have been about it, and it's gotten way more downloads and usage than I would have even expected, and I was pretty optimistic about it. So that's been great. Llama 3, there's always another model that we're training. So it's for right now, we trained Llama 2, and we released it as an open source model, and right now the priority is building that into a bunch of the consumer products, all the different AIs and a bunch of different products that we're basically building as consumer products. Because Llama 2 by itself, it's not a consumer product, right? It's more of a piece of infrastructure that people could build things with. So that's been the big priority, is kind of continuing to fine tune and kind of just get Llama 2 and its the branches that we've built off of it ready for consumer products that hopefully hundreds of millions of people will enjoy using those products, and billions one day. But yeah, we're also working on the future foundation models, and I don't have anything new or news on that. I don't know. I don't know exactly when it's going to be ready. I think just like we had a debate around Llama 2 and open sourcing it, I think we'll need to have a similar debate and process to red team this and make sure that this is safe. And my hope is that we'll be able to open source this next version when it's ready too. But that's not that we're not close to doing that this month. This is it's a thing that we're still somewhat early in working on.
Well, in general, thank you so much for open sourcing Llama 2 and for being transparent about all the exciting developments around AI. I feel like that's contributing to a really awesome conversation about where we go with AI. And obviously, it's really interesting to see all the same kind of technology integrated into these personalized AI systems with the AI personas, which I think when you put it in people's hands and they get to have conversations with these AI personas, you get to see like interesting failure cases, like where the things are dumb or they go into weird directions, or and we get to learn as a society together what's too far, what's interesting, what's fun, how much personalization is good, how much generic is good, and we get to learn all of this. And you probably don't know this yourself. Like we have to all figure it out by using it, right?
Yeah, I mean, part of what we're trying to do with the initial AI's launch is having a diversity of different use cases, just so that people can try different things. Because I don't know what's going to work. I mean, are people going to like playing the text-based adventure games, or are they going to, like having a comedian who can add jokes to threads, or are they going to want to interact with historical figures? We made one of Jane Austen and one of Marcus Aurelius, and
Mhm.
I'm curious to see how that goes.
I'm
Um,
excited for both.
yeah,
As a big fan, I'm excited for both to have conversations with them. I mean, yeah, that's
yeah,
and I am also excited to see, the internet. I don't know if you heard, can get kind of weird, and I applaud them for it. So
I've
I
heard
get to,
that. Yeah,
yeah. So it'd be nice to see how weird they take it, what kind of memes are generated from this, and I think all of it is especially in these early stages of development, as we progress towards AGI, it's good to learn by playing with those systems and interacting with them at like a large scale, like you said.
yeah, totally. I mean, that's why. Well, so we're starting out with a set, and then we're also working on this platform that we call AI Studio. That's going to make it so that over time anyone will be able to create one of these AIs, almost like they create any other UGC content across the platform. So I'm excited about that. I think that to some degree, we're not going to see the full potential of this until you just have the full creativity of the whole community being able to build stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that we need to get right. So I'm excited to take this in stages. I don't think anyone out there is really doing what we're doing here. I think that there are
Mhm.
there are people who are doing kind of like fictional or consumer oriented character type stuff, but the extent to which we're building it out with the avatars and expressiveness and making it so that they can interact across all of the different apps, and they'll have profiles, and we'll be able to engage people on Instagram and Facebook. I think it's going to be really fun.
Well, so we're talking about AI, but I'm still blown away this entire time that I'm talking to Mark Zuckerberg and you're not here, but you feel like you're here. I've done quite a few intimate conversations with people alone in a room, and this feels like that. So I keep forgetting for long stretches of time that like we're not in the same room. And for me to imagine a future where I can, with a snap of a finger, do that with anyone in my life, the way we can just call right now and have this kind of shallow 2D experience, uh, to have this experience like we're sitting next to each other is like I don't I don't think we can even imagine what how that changes things. Where you can immediately have intimate one-on-one conversations with anyone. That might, like, in a way we might not even predict change civilization.
Well, I mean, this is a lot of the thesis behind the whole metaverse, is giving people the ability to feel like you're present with someone. I mean, this is like the main thing I talk about all the time. But I do think that there's a lot to process about it. I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I'm definitely here. We're just not we're not physically in the same place. It's not like
Yeah.
you're not talking to an AI, right? This is so I think the thing that's novel is the ability to convey through technology a sense of almost physical presence.
Mm.
So the thing that is not physically real is us being in the same physical place, but kind of everything else is. And I think that gets to this somewhat philosophical question about what is the nature of kind of the modern real world. And I just think that it really is this combination of a physical world and the presence that we feel, but also being able to combine that with this increasingly rich and powerful and capable digital world that we have, and all of the innovation that's getting created there. So I think it's super exciting, because I mean the digital world is just increasing in its capability and our ability to do awesome things, but the physical world is so profound, and that's a lot of what makes us human, is that we're physical beings. So I don't think we want to run away from that and just spend all day on a screen. And that's like, it's one of the reasons why I care so much about helping to shape and accelerate these future computing platforms. I just think this is so powerful. And it's even though the current version of this is like you're wearing a headset, I just think this is going to be by far the most human and social computing platform that has ever existed. And I don't know, that's what makes me excited.
Yeah, I think just to linger on this kind of changing nature of reality, like of what is real, maybe shifting it towards the sort of consciousness. So, what is real is the subjective experience of a thing that makes it feel real versus necessarily being in the same physical space. Because it feels like we're in the same physical space.
Yeah.
And that the conscious experience of it, that's probably what is real, not like that the space time, like the physics of it. Like you're basically breaking physics
Yeah.
and focusing on the consciousness. That's what's real. Just whatever is going on inside my head.
But there are a lot of social and psychological things that go along with that experience that was previously only physical presence, right? I think that there's like an intimacy, a trust.
Mhm,
There's a level of communication, because so much of communication is nonverbal and is based on
mhm,
expressions that you're kind of you're sharing with someone when you're in this kind of environment. And before, those things would have only been possible, had I gotten on a plane and flown to Austin and sat physically with you in the same place. So
mhm.
I think we're basically shortcutting those laws of physics and delivering the social and psychological benefits of being able to be present and feel like you're there with another person, which I think are real benefits. Um, to anyone in the world. And I think that, like you said, I mean, I think that is going to be a very profound thing. And that a lot of that is, that's the promise of the metaverse, and what, why, I just, well, I think that that's the next frontier for what we're working on. I started working on social networks when they were primarily text, where the first version of Facebook, your profile, you had one photo and the rest of it was like lists of things that you were interested in. And
Mm.
and then we kind of went through the period where we were doing photos, and now we're kind of in the period where most of the content is video. But there's a clear trend where, over time, the way that we want to express ourselves and kind of get insight and content about the world around us gets increasingly just richer and more vivid. And I think the ability to be immersed and feel present with the people around you, or the people who you care about, is, from my perspective, clearly the next frontier. It just so happens that it's incredibly technologically difficult, right? It requires building up these new computing platforms and completely new software stacks to deliver that. But I mean, I kind of feel like that's what we're here to do as a company.
Well, I really love the connection you have through conversation, and so for me, this photorealism is really really exciting. I'm really excited for this future, and thank you for building it. Thanks to you, and thanks to the amazing Meta teams that I've met, the engineers, and just everybody I've met here. Thank you for helping to build this future, and thank you, Mark, for talking to me inside the metaverse. This is blowing my mind. I can't quite express. I would love to measure my heart rate this whole time. Would be hilarious if you're actually like sitting on a beach right now.
I'm
Like,
not. I'm in a conference room.
okay, well, I'm on a beach and and not wearing any pants. So I'm really sorry about that for anyone else who's watching me in physical space. Anyway, thank you so much for talking today. This really blew my mind. It's one of the most incredible experiences of my life. So thank you for giving that to me.
Awesome. Awesome. Glad you got to check it out. And it's always fun to talk. All right. I'll catch you soon. See ya.
See you later. This is so amazing, man. This is so amazing.